On this episode of Ask the Experts, we have Lorne Jenkins, the co-founder of Mini Money Management. Hi, Lorne.
Hey, it's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. So where are you at in this part of the world?
So I'm actually right outside of Denver, Colorado. So Longmont, Colorado, if anybody's ever heard of it.
Sounds cold.
It is. It's like 20 degrees right now. I'm struggling.
Wow. I take it you're not a fan of the
Not
weather.
I am I always tell people I'm tropical, so I'm
Mhm.
more I'm more built for the summer months. But I don't mind winter as long as I don't have to drive. But today I've got to go out and drive and get some stuff done and scrape the car. So not a happy camper.
I hear you. Well, hey, you know what? Let's talk about your blog for a second. Tell me about Mini Money Management. What is that all about?
Yeah, so Mini Money Management is actually a game that my mom played with me growing up.
Hmm.
So we turned it so my mom turned the house into an economy. So we had to she paid us every week and we had to pay for rent, we had to pay for utilities, we had to pay for food.
Wait, was your
Um,
mom the tax man?
yeah, she was. So she
Whoa.
literally she gave us job interviews. We had to apply for the job. She called our my 8-year-old references. It was crazy. um, and I think Nah, but I
That's
think it was just really cool because I didn't realize what the basics of money were, like how good my foundation of my money understanding was until I left. So she always taught us, it was like, look, here's your salary, make sure you pay for your bills first, and then the rest of it, save a little bit and then have fun with the rest. And it's such it's such a simple concept, but it's something that we're not taught growing up. So what we've started doing is that we work with teachers, we work with parents, and we're starting to host our own classes where we just give people the same tools that my mom had. So it's like, hey, look, you just turn a kid's life into an economy. So we prepare them for the world that they're going to be entering. Obviously, math is important, history is important, science is important, but the one thing that you're going to use pretty much every day for the rest of your life is money. And kids develop those spending and saving habits at the age of 5, but we don't teach them until either they mess up or if you're really lucky, you have a parent who teaches you. Excuse me.
Sure.
But
Actually, I had to learn on my own after I had made pretty much every single mistake in the book.
and
So
that's what we're trying to avoid, I think. And then there's so many people who I talk to and they say, oh, I wish I would have had this growing up. And through that you just see the piece that's missing. It's not a big piece that a lot of people are missing, because again, you make those mistakes, you understand the concepts of money, but there's just a little switch that once you flip it, changes your mindset.
for all of you who are watching this video currently, do you think that money should be spoken about at home? If so, give me a like on this video. It'll give me an idea if what you guys all think. I think money should be spoken about at home, and clearly, Lauren, you do as well. Where do you think your mom got the motivation or the thought to teach you guys about money at home?
So it actually wasn't about money. It was about money, but it was because we kept asking her to go out to eat. And so she saw that we just didn't have a concept of that it was more
Right.
expensive to go out to eat than it was to stay at home. And so her big claim to fame is that after this summer we played this game, she was like, hey, do you guys want to go out to eat? And we're like, no, that's way too expensive, because she would charge us more to go out to eat than it was to stay at home. And it wasn't that we were bad. It wasn't that we didn't have an appreciation for money. We just weren't taught about it before that. And so for us, it was just as simple as, I can save up my money to go swimming. I can save up my money to play video games, or I can go out to eat. And then as a kid, you start to prioritize those things. Whereas a lot of people don't start to make those prioritizations until they leave the house, and then you make the wrong one. My money blew away. I had to take out loans. I made a lot of money mistakes, but I made them when I was 8, 9, and 10, not when I was 18, 19, and
Mm,
20. That's the
sure,
difference.
sure. And what age do you think that children should be taught about money? I mean, at age one? I mean, or at 10? Like,
Yeah.
when do you start that process?
There's a super interesting study done by the World Economic Forum, and they did say that kids start to have an emotional response between spending and saving as early as 5.
Whoa.
Now, obviously, I don't think we should open up credit cards for 5-year-olds,
Mm,
but if they're already having that emotional response to, okay, here's some money, should I spend it or should I save it? Then that's when we should start to teach them. My little sister was 5 when she played the game, and she's been better with money than I have been. And it's not like I've been bad with it, but she was just taught about it at an early age. Even I think at the age of 9 or 10, she was too young to babysit, but she would go over to people's houses and she called it mother's helper. And so she would just like let the moms like get stuff done during the day and she would just like watch over the kids. And she ended up like, she always had a boatload of money. And my mom got a flat tire one day and she was like, hey, we got to go to the ATM so that we could pay the guy. She was like, oh, how much do you need? She was like, oh, I need like $50. And this like 8-year-old kid just pulls out $50 from her wallet. I was like, yeah, I've got that. But it was just because she was taught money that early. It's not that she couldn't get it. We just taught it to her.
So tell me about this game. Is this a game that you guys developed, or is this something that you bought off the shelf?
Yeah, so it was literally everything was from scratch. So my mom is a little bit over the top. So my mom's my co-founder. So
Okay.
she like it was all in her head and she was like, look, they don't understand money. What can I do to do it? My mom's super creative, a little bit over the top, love her to death. And
Yeah.
so everything that we did, the job postings, the
Yeah.
interviews, the budget sheets, all of that she just made by hand. And so we put everything, into technology now, but it really is the same game that my mom played with me. And so that's why she's my co-founder, is because obviously I wouldn't be here without her.
And what is the name of the game is also Mini Money Management?
Yeah, so Mini Money Management's the company.
Okay.
And so for teachers, we have essentially it's just a classroom economy. So we have like the school side of things where teachers will say, look, you've got 20 to 30 kids in a classroom. You need a better behavior management system. Here's a classroom economy. The classroom economy isn't really a new idea, but putting the technology behind the classroom economy is what teachers are really starting to enjoy. Because, instead of having to remember what kid has how much, they're dealing with paper money. Now the kids have a checking account. They have a virtual savings account. They can purchase items from a shop. And so for the teacher, they're really working on their classroom, their classroom management, making sure that everything is running smoothly. And the kids are just learning about money every single day. The same way that you learn how to read, the same way you learn how to write. It's just, you just kind of do it and you make your mistakes.
Interesting. And where can you buy the, or can somebody buy the game, or is it only available, through the education system?
Absolutely. So everything is just minimoneymanagement.com. So
All right.
we're free for teachers. Yep. Go ahead.
So it's all there.
Yep, everything. The teacher app is going to be there. The parent app for them to use it at home. We're going to start hosting financial literacy classes. I think starting in April, actually, for Financial Literacy Month. So we're going to have our interactive classes, and that's where we really just try to get kids to understand money through experience. I think that, there's one thing to read about what an interest rate is. There's one thing to read what a checking account is. But then there's another thing to experience it and to have your life kind of built around this type of a game. It's going to stick with you a little bit longer and it's going to be more impactful.
How many schools do you think have picked this game up?
Ooh, that's a good question. The last time I checked, we had
hundreds?
I think we've got over like 100 teachers using it. We've got over like 100 parents. So we've been around for just over a year and some change. Yeah, and so obviously the tech part of things is always a good time. But
Sure.
no, yeah, like once, like I think we've had our app up for just over just under a year. We've got about 100 teachers, 100 so parents.
Incredible. Now, for those of you who want to learn about money management for kids at home, what is the age range that this particular game applies to? Because teaching something to a 5-year-old will be different than teaching something to a 15-year-old.
Yeah. So we really try to we say K through 8. So that's like what, 5 to 13 is really where like the sweet spot of like the main use of the app. What we're learning kind of through teaching these classes and like through talking to teachers is that a lot of kids weren't taught the basics. So we're doing a lot of these same lessons and we obviously scale it up a little bit, but we're doing it with high school kids. We've started doing it with college kids. We're doing it with young adults now. And it's just because, again, like there's the fundamentals of money that weren't really taught and like your foundation is a little bit.
So. And what I keep hearing, time and time again, is that people don't talk about finance at home. And if they did, then then you could put these concepts together and and realize that 1 and 1 does equal 2, and then move from there. But if you don't talk about it at home, you just kind of sweep it under the rug, and hoping it's going to go away. Well, the problem doesn't, but we also don't end up learning anything. We don't do anything with it. So I think this is a really incredible opportunity for people to get ahead, at least in the future. Can you imagine what society would be like if we all grew up with perhaps no student loans, very little debt, or at least outside of a mortgage, and invested, the most part of our money. I mean, that'd be an incredible society. I think, although consumerism would go out the window.
Well, and I think it would just change, and that's
Yeah.
obviously what we can talk about as a whole. Is it's not that you shouldn't spend your money; it's just spend it a little bit smarter. And I think that obviously a lot of the market people are like, okay, if you're in debt, we can help you, or if you have a boatload of money, we can help you. But like, why should we have to get people out of debt? Let's just not let people get in debt or in bad debt in the first
Yeah.
place, because debt
Yeah.
isn't evil. Like, money is a tool. It's
Mhm.
just how do we decide to use it?
You're absolutely right. When I hear folks talk about, being completely debt free, it kind of gives me a little bit of a chill, because it sends the message that, debt in itself is a bad thing. And
Mm.
in my experience, it's not. It's how you manage it. And if you manage it well and you use it for the right purposes, then it can be fine. Like a mortgage. I don't have any problem with a mortgage, as long as you pay it and you have enough money left over at the end of the month to do what you need to achieve those goals that you want down the line.
And we like to talk a lot about awareness. So for me, I went through my whole undergrad with no student debt, and everyone's like,
Right.
"Oh, that's such a good like thing." But then I took out student loans to go get my master's degree.
Hmm.
But I understood that, when I take out these student loans, I'm gonna have to repay them. I had a plan to repay them. I knew how long it was gonna take me to repay it. And so it's not then like with taking out that student debt, I got to go to London. So I traveled across the world for the first time. I visited, I think it was like 11 or 12 different countries. I got to see pieces of the world I never got to see. I ended up with a master's degree. I worked out there for a while. And so, like, there's some people would say, oh, never take out student debt. It's not don't take out student debt or don't take out loans or don't take out mortgages. It's just understand what you're getting into before you do it.
Yeah, that's great advice. In fact, actually, I put up a video up here on how to manage student debt. I spoke yesterday with Robert Farrington, and he is an expert in student debt, and gave me a lot of really eye-opening tips about managing it. Things that I just had no idea about. In terms of even debt forgiveness programs and things like that, and just kind of going, interesting. And also how much debt to take on. Some interesting rules of thumb to take a look at. So if we want to learn more about teaching kids finance, aside from visiting your site and playing the game, what are some things that people might be able to do tonight? Like literally tonight with their family, what would be the first, let's say, first three things that you would do to get, to get the topic of finance spoken about at home?
That's a very good question. So I think it's kind of like a part A, and if you've already got part one done, then we can move on. But the first one is you have to understand like where you're at with money. And I think like as parents, as like older people, especially when you're trying to influence the younger generation, you're always going to have your own opinions, your own thoughts, your own, I guess it's not stereotypes, but you're going to have your own opinions on money. So unpacking how you feel about money, what you were taught about money, what you are doing well with the money, what you're not doing well with the money is super important, because you don't want to pass obviously any of your bad traits down to your kids. And so that's why it's kind of like, that's why I always talk about the financial foundations. So I call it gap. So like the first step is figure out like what your gap is. So everybody talks about savings, needs, and then wants. So I take a step back and make it a little more simple. So if you, instead of savings, it's goals and habits. What goals are you setting, and are you getting in the right habits of saving? Like, what are you actually saving for? Because it's impossible to save if you don't have something that you're saving for. You're just thinking, okay, I'm putting away money and hopefully it goes out for something. And then it's the habit forming of money. So everybody, a lot of people will talk about the 50-30-20. So the 50% needs, 30% wants, 20% saving. Well, if you can only save 5%, a lot of people will set those type of budgets. So like, okay, I can't save 20%. I'm not going to save it all. It's not the amount that you save, it's the habit forming of saving. So you have to have this conversation with yourself, and then you have that conversation with your kids. The A is awareness of emotions. So instead of needs, it's you have to understand what emotional profile you are when it comes to money. There are people who are just genetically built to be more attuned to I like to save, and there's people who are going to be more on the center of I like to spend. So understanding where you are and then how that applies. But there's two types of needs. There are emotional well-being, and then there's life evaluation. So your emotional well-being is, do you have a roof over your head? Are you living in a safe area? Do you have food on your table? Like, are your basic kind of humanity needs being met? And like they did a study actually, and statistically speaking, after $65,000 of an annual salary, and this is for one person, so families obviously it'll increase a little bit, but after $65,000, your emotional well-being, it doesn't go up anymore. So after that point, like your basic needs are met at 65K. And then your life evaluation, this is where it gets a little bit tricky, because some people will call that a need and other people's will call that a want. The big thing about life evaluation is it's always about comparison. So if I'm making 40K and you're making 30K, my life evaluation will be higher than somebody making 80K whose best friend is making 90K. Mm. As humans, it's like this lovely scientific term called hedonic adaptation. But what it really means is that we get extremely comfortable with wherever we are. They did a study on a guy who lost his legs on the same day that somebody else won the lottery. They took a survey of them 2 months later, and they both expressed the same level of happiness, or like contentness. I don't think that's a word. No, the same level of content with their life. And so that's what it is. It's about like we get comfortable with wherever we are, and then we start to compare to other people. So that's why we kind of talk about be aware of your emotions. You have to teach your kids like what are actual basic needs and what are we doing that compares ourselves to others, which may or may not be a need. And your happiness level actually like statistically goes down after you make, depending on the country, but right around 105K in the US, your happiness level actually decreases on average. And the last is your personal enjoyment. And this is my favorite category. I call it the ball out category. So once you've set yourself up to save, once you've set yourself up to, you've got your needs hit, have fun. I say ball out. Some people don't like that term, but it is like have fun with your money, because why work? Why clock in at a 9 to 5 every day? Like why put in that type of work if you're not going to enjoy your money? And what's an intelligent, like I had a really good friend of mine say, like everybody spends their money on something. I like shoes, I like video games, and I like to travel. And that's what I spend my fun money on. But you should feel comfortable in having fun with your money because you've set yourself up for success before. So that's why it's in order. It's savings, then needs, and then your wants.
Sure. So it's not using debt to finance that lifestyle.
No. And again, we can kind of get into credit cards. That's a whole offshoot. But I mean, yeah, at the end of the day, like there's a reason that there's an order to it. And
sure.
And again, it doesn't fit for everybody. So that's why I'm trying not to say 50, 30, 20. It's understanding like how much can you save, what percentage are your needs going to actually take up, and then what do you have left to have fun with. That's and then great. As you kind of get in those habits, that's when you'll kind of say, okay, now that I've got this, and this in order, now I can go 50, 30, 20, or whatever budgeting tool. Budgeting is like dieting. Just pick one that works for you.
I keep saying the same thing. It seems like that's so interesting. So tell me about credit cards. What is your take on them? Because for me, my credit card is a fancy debit card with lots of points, but that's about it.
That's how it should be used. And I always say, especially if you haven't had a credit card before, you can pay for your needs with a credit card. Don't ever start paying with your wants for a credit card, because there's a psychological study that's done, and with a credit card, you have less of a spending kind of break. So you'll tend to spend more with the credit card just naturally. Now, obviously, if you get in the right habit of, okay, I'm going to make this purchase, get my points, and then pay my credit card off right away, that's perfectly fine. But that's not actually what builds a lot of credit. What builds credit is, you have a big purchase and you pay that off over time. And it's not to say making smaller purchases won't help your credit score, but it's not going to help it as much as it will compared to how much extra you're spending using a credit card. So especially for people who are just getting started, it's your needs, like, so your groceries, your rent, your phone bill, those are things that you can't really, if you buy more potatoes at the grocery store, more power to you, but you're not going to spend more on those things because they're necessities. it's the wants where we tend to get out of control, and you're like, oh, okay, well, it's just a credit card. And there's a lot of people who I talk to, because I'll help young people with their money, and I say, well, what's your credit card bill this month? Oh, I don't know, I just check at the end of the month. Well, what if it's too high? Well, I don't know. and that's the headspace that we get in.
Because
But no,
it's the
it
minimum
really,
payment that matters.
yes. And again, it should be a fancy debit card with
Yeah.
points
Yeah.
if you use it the right way. But until you get into those habits, I don't use my credit card on my wants.
Interesting. So the way I handle, let's go back. When I was 18, I was given a credit card with a $5,000 limit on it, and I just went to town. I thought that was like free money. And then the bill came in, and the minimum payment was like $50. I was like, oh wow, this is great, wonderful. And then I discovered that the banks will even just increase your credit limit as long as you keep making the minimum payment. They'll happily do that.
Mhm.
Today, I try and spend everything I can on my credit card. However, my credit card also gets paid 2 to 3 times a week. So I log into my banking app just to check, my checking account, my savings account, my investments, all of that kind of stuff. And at the same time, I see my credit card. It says, okay, great. I have a $250 balance. Okay, great. So I just, do a quick transfer and away it goes. So 2 to 3 times a week, that money goes in, and that's it. And I also have an automatic payment set up so that if I forget at the end of the month to pay it off, one of two things will happen. The bank will attempt to pay the entire balance, or that if there's not enough funds, God forbid, then it'll take the minimum payment instead. So that's, it's like a plan B and plan C in the event, something really terrible happened.
And again, but you're using your credit card more like a debit card. So
Exactly.
you spend that 250 early in the week, and you immediately feel it, even if it's a day or two later, because you're paying that 250 off.
That's right.
Now, if you go 4 weeks and you're swiping, you may lose track. But essentially, I mean, you're using the credit card the perfect way.
Yeah.
And that's why I say, like, money isn't evil, but I do say if you haven't had a credit card before, or if you're more on the spendthrift side, so if you have less of an emotional response to spending money, I would encourage you to use a debit card, because I mean, for you to pay it off 2 to 3 times a week, I would almost guarantee you're a tightwad. So you are better at saving your money than the average person.
Today.
But again, that comes through kind of pain and all that.
I'll tell you a funny story. So I live in the town where Ferraris are made. And they test drive their cars. They don't, I mean, they've got a racetrack, but they test every Ferrari on the local roads. And I happen to live along the local road that they test their cars. So I can hear them literally go from 0 to like whatever speed that they're going at, and then braking and going back and forth. It's crazy. And I drive a Toyota Yaris hybrid.
I like that. But were you always like that?
No. One time I got, this was about 2007. I received a really huge bonus. And what did I do with the bonus? I bought a Range Rover.
That's good. Okay. It happens.
But I realized at that particular time that it was a crazy move, and I ended up selling the truck, and I ended up not losing any money on it, including the depreciation, because I had bought it used, and I was able to sell it for exactly what I paid for it. So
that's
besides the maintenance and the gas and the insurance, that was a loss. I mean, but that's a loss no matter what. But I was very proud of myself that a year later I was able to do that. But then I didn't get a car after that. I didn't use a car for a while. I just walked in.
And so that was my story with credit cards. So moving back from London, I ended up leaving the job I was at. And so I kind of got deported-ish. And so I had to I was getting all my stuff back home. And I was like, okay, cool. I'm just going to, I'll just get all my shipping stuff back home on my credit card. And so there's probably 2 or 3 weeks, I think I just lived off a credit card. And I was I thought that I was spending the same amount that I normally would. Get home, got all my stuff home. I look up and I have this huge credit card bill. And I was like, I didn't spend that much over like 2 or 3 months. And it took me a good 3 or 4 months to pay it down. And, I had a plan for it and my budget got cut extremely short. But it's so easy to just kind of get into those bad habits. And so I was like, oh, yeah, it's a credit card. I'll be fine. I know all this stuff. I fell into the same trap. And so for me, it made me way more conscious of it. So of course, I'll make credit purchases on my credit card, but I pay them off right away.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you just live and you learn.
Live and learn, exactly. And you guys are bringing all of this to to kids today. That is absolutely incredible. Lorne Jenkins from Mini Money Management, thank you so much for being here with me today and talking about this. We're going to go ahead and leave the link to your blog and your game in the description below, and hopefully you guys continue to do this, and I wish you much success.
Hey, thank you. Thanks for having me on. It was really good.
You better believe it. Take care.
Cool. See ya.